All right, what's up, everyone? It's Zach, and today I'm here with a very special guest. I'm here with Eric Kenreich. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Zach. How you doing? Of
Good, doing well. Thanks for asking, and thanks for taking some time to be on the podcast.
course.
So, for those of you listening back home, Eric is a really awesome dude that I was really fortunate enough to just get connected with recently. He's a former pro wrestler, and he's currently a fitness and mindset coach for dads. Really big into fitness himself and has his own personal journey that he's gone through. Also, a big advocate for mental health as well. So, that's a little bit about Eric, but do you mind kind of giving us a little bit of your background, who you are, what you're doing, all that good stuff?
I'm not sure I could have summed it up any better myself. That was a hell of an intro, man. Thank you for that.
Of course.
My journey is very long. I've done a lot of things, worn a lot of different paths throughout my life. So I don't want to bore anybody, but here's the Cliff Notes version. I was born here in Sarasota, Florida, born and raised. Spent some time in Orlando and Tampa. Became a pro wrestler in the early 2000s. Spent a lot of time, traveling around the United States, seeing all sorts of cool places that I would have never seen otherwise. Went to Europe, went to Canada, got many concussions. Then retired 2010, started a family, did some other business ventures, including opening a gym. I also started coaching powerlifting and even opened up my own bakery. And in a full circle moment, found myself back to coaching this last calendar year after a little foray back into professional wrestling. So yeah, that about sums it up in less than a minute. I could be very long-winded as a coach. You probably understand. We have to articulate a lot of concepts, and sometimes we can get a bit carried away. So I'm gonna stop there. Ex pro wrestler, ex bakery owner, ex gym owner, ex um, how do I put this, morbidly obese child, current, current fitness and mindset coach, and super dad.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you for that introduction and that kind of walk through your journey. And, the thing that's interesting, Eric, is a lot of the things that you listed that you've done or that you're doing, they're not necessarily common things, right? Like opening a gym, opening a bakery, being a pro wrestler. So, what led you down that path? Have you always just been a really ambitious, I want to go after my dreams kind of guy, or did it just kind of all happen almost out of luck or just random occurrence?
Yeah, I've always had a lot of interest. When I went back to therapy, my therapist was convinced that I had undiagnosed adult ADHD. And at first, I was very defensive about it. So I was like, no way, no way, I have no problem focusing. She's like, no, that's not how ADHD works. You don't understand. And the more research I did, the more I realized, yeah, I might have that. I've always had a lot of hobbies, a lot of interests. I've always found myself pulled in many different directions. I also find myself becoming, I don't want to say obsessed, but entrenched in these things and just really enamored with whatever I'm doing. And it's always helped me. It's always been to my benefit for the most part, especially when it comes to business. So I find that if you're going to achieve anything, you have to give your all. And if I can't do it 110%, I just won't do it. So the bakery was a food thing. I love food. I've always loved food. And so I started making cookies just for fun. I have a big social media following. People got interested. Once again, I'm going to say this a lot. Long story short, ended up opening my own bakery. Turns out I'm a great cookie maker, not a great businessman. So that didn't pan out, but it was a great experience.
Yeah.
Pro wrestling, I was a wrestling fan. I became a fan in the late 90s. I was a little bit late to the party. As most guys my age started watching the 80s during Hulkamania, but I got in during the boom in the 90s, and I gravitated more towards the at this time more obscure stuff. You would do what's called tape trading. I get VHS tapes from Japan. Fell in love with the Japanese style. Tried to pattern myself after that. Got into the independent wrestling scene during its peak, during the golden age of independent wrestling. Now I get to watch a lot of my friends on WWE and AEW, and that's awesome. Living vicariously through them. The gym, obviously, practice for fitness. I was into powerlifting at that point. Our town didn't have any powerlifting center gyms. It was, in the Stone Ages, we'd get yelled at for dropping weights at a gold or using
Hmm.
stock. So we opened up a place like that. Once again, huge practice for fitness, a lot of knowledge, not a great businessman. So I've found myself back to coaching, which is nice because business is an important part of coaching. However, there's not a lot of you don't have to worry about the profit margins like you would with a gym or a bakery. Bakeries are way harder, but even you think a gym's a hard business to run, bakeries are brutal, absolutely brutal. Unless you feel okay with charging like $9 a cookie, which I don't. it's a tough business to be in. But everything I've been through has brought me right here to this moment, and I am thankful for that.
See, I love that because I was going to ask you, like, with the things that you've done, whether it's the bakery or the gym, wrestling, like, is there any sort of like regret or like, oh man, I wish I just got into coaching earlier? But it sounds like you're happy with everything that you've gone through because it's led you to this moment right here.
Yes, I have zero regrets. As a matter of fact, when I retired from wrestling in 2010, the first time, I didn't retire on my terms. It was kind of pushed out. There was a regime change in the upper management, and I didn't get the retirement I thought I deserved after putting in a decade of work. So one night, my wife and I were out on a date night, and she brought up the fact that, she asked me a question. She goes, "Do you have any regrets?" I said, "You know what? Not really, other than the way my professional wrestling career ended." So she said, and she had a few margaritas, so that's why I'm going to blame this decision on that. She said, "Why don't you go back?" I was like, "I haven't wrestled in, at that point, it had been almost 9 years."
Hmm.
And she said, just go, just do it. And I'd been doing jujitsu, so I've been doing rolls, and my proprioceptive awareness was good enough. And wrestling, when you do it, anything for a decade, it's just some muscle memory that needs some retuning, right?
Right.
So I jumped back in head first. I reached out to some people that I knew, and I got in, and I had a real fun, almost I'd say almost a year. Then COVID screwed everything up. Like it screwed up a lot of things,
Yeah.
and took a break, came back, and it just wasn't the same after that. But that was just one of those moments, and this is one of those stories I'll tell my kids, that you just have to try, because I was petrified for so long about going back, because I was paralyzed by the idea that I would fail. But
Hmm.
I talk with my wife. This is a recurring theme, by the way. She's she's always there for me to give me a
Yeah.
nice little kick in the ass. Because don't you just want to know? Even if you fail, you still know you suck. And I didn't suck, but at least I knew. Same thing opening up a gym. Are you gonna suck? Are you gonna succeed? You don't know. But
Right.
why go the rest of your life wondering if you can? I don't want to do that. So bakery was the same thing. I learned, I moved forward, and now I'm back to coaching. And all these lessons, whether it's business wise or my relationship with food, my relationship with my family, all these struggles and these hardships that I've gone through, have formed the man and the coach that I am today.
Yeah. I think that that's a great point to anyone listening, that you never know if you don't try. So if there's something that you're kind of itching to do or you've always thought about or you've dreamed about doing, yeah, you might fail or it might not go the way that you wanted, but you'll never know if you don't try. And I think that kind of like paralysis that we face and that regret later
Yeah.
on in life, that's probably worse than failing or losing some money because of, something not working out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cliche phrase, right? The only thing worse than the pain of failure is the pain of regret.
Hmm.
And I would rather know that I sucked at something and failed at something than have that question hanging above my head for the rest of my life.
Totally. So you mentioned that your dad, your family man and everything. So that's obviously kind of translated into your coaching, right? You coach
Mhm.
dads. What led you to want to do coaching for dads specifically?
Well, I've always been kind of a niche guy. Like when I started personal training, like everybody in this business, mostly back before the advent of online coaching, started in big box gyms. So you work with a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life, body sizes, men, women, everything. So you get a nice variety and you get a lot of experience working with the general population. But then when you branch out on your own, you decide you want to narrow that field a little bit. So when I got into powerlifting as a competitor, I just had a lot of passion for that. And I started coaching a few people at our gym that we had at the time, and they got great results. And then the word of mouth spread, so I ended up being a powerlifting coach. And I fell into an accidental niche there. I had probably 80% female clientele, and I'm not creepy or anything like that. It's just the way it went. And in my experience, I prefer coaching women because women are, well, at least in this age range that I was working with, are infinitely more coachable than men in the same age range. Men think they know everything. They don't want to
Hmm.
listen to you. Well, I'm stronger than you. I don't want to listen to you. The women were just much more coachable. Not that they weren't headaches. I mean, they were just every power lifter, almost every athlete I've ever worked with has had some basket case moments.
Yeah.
But that was a cool little niche that I fell into. And then I got out of that. I knew I wanted to get back to coaching, but no offense to my wonderful queens out there, I still want to work with women. There's a whole sorts of, there's way more variables with women. There's a lot of stuff and I like to stay in my lane. And
Hmm.
this is really what I'm getting at here. I want to stay in my lane, and I want to talk to people that I can relate to. I love my wife, and she's great at fitness coaching because she understands, the hormonal issues and the things that women deal with. I can't relate. I can pretend to relate, but I'm never going to know how that feels.
Right.
So I picked dad because I go to the parks with my kids all the time because I'm still a stay-at-home dad, even though I'm an online coach. And that's one of the greatest things about being an online coach and being your own boss is I can also be a stay-at-home dad.
Right.
So I go to the parks, I go to the schools, pick my kids up. I see these dads, and it's just sad that even in this day and age, which I'd like to think more people are fitness minded than ever,
Hmm.
it seems that dads will fall into this trap that the media even seems to push this narrative that once you're 40 plus, once you have kids, that you just got to pack it in. It's over for you. You don't need to take care of your fitness anymore. You don't even need to take care of your appearance. No offense to the croc wearers out there, but you won't catch me dead in a pair of Crocs. Okay, that's the true sign of just giving up. I'm not gonna. That's the white flag of masculinity to me. Is the Crocs. Sorry guys, I'm a sneakerhead, so we're not doing that.
I'm
But
with
I see
you.
these dads. Yeah, yeah. So we see these dads, and like I, I wanted to shake because it's not about having being shredded or being jacked. It's about being a good example for your kids. Okay,
Hmm.
because your kids are going to emulate your behavior, and B, it's about being alive long enough to see your kids grow up and not only be alive but have a good quality of life too. And so I'm very passionate about that. And obviously, I've been through a lot of struggles of my own on the mental side of things and the food relationship side of things. And that's where most men struggle, even if they don't want to talk about it. Everybody loves to lift. We all love to lift. We
Yeah.
all love to exercise in the fitness world. Some of us have some food issues we need to address, and some people just don't want to poke that bear. So I'm there to listen to them and to help them because I've been there and I've done that. I don't want them to go through the same thing.
Right. Yeah, it's cool that you kind of have that mentality of almost like paying it forward. Like you've been there, you know what it's like. You don't want to see anyone struggle in similar ways that you have yourself.
Yeah, I think the best coaches are the people that honestly, you know, we all want to make a living. We
Hmm.
all want to be compensated for our skills. But the best coaches that I've met, and I pride myself on being this kind of person too, is relating to people, seeing the pain that they're in, and knowing how to help them, and getting an incredible satisfaction from helping them. I mean, nothing makes me feel better than a client telling me about a win. It doesn't have to be like something crazy. Just little, I didn't drink for this week, and I
Hmm.
just get so pumped up by that. We do these client calls, we talk. I might as well have just mainlined like a nitro cold brew or something because I'm shot out of a cannon, and it just makes me so happy. It really fills my cup.
Yeah.
It really satisfies me and brings me a lot of joy to know that I'm helping people.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference. And I think it's a cool thing that, you have that passion for fitness, but the coaching that you do, it's fitness, it's mindset, it's time management. It's not just like, hey, we're gonna get you a six pack. It's we're gonna help you live that more fulfilling life. And kind of like you said, like not feeling like, oh, I'm 40, I have to, just give up on my life. Like I can't, live to the same quality that I lived like in my 20s or something like that.
Yeah, I like to think I come from a practical point of view too, because
Yeah.
I understand that the 20 something fitness enthusiasts and the 40 something fitness enthusiasts are going to have two different types of schedules, maybe two different types of goals.
Hmm.
So it's important that no matter who you choose to guide you on your fitness journey, that it's the right kind of person.
Yeah.
Understand that if you are like, I personally feel that if you have children, you're a dad, you should hire somebody who also has children who can relate and
Hmm.
understand. And that's why time management is so important for my clients because that was the biggest thing for me, the biggest hurdle by far when I had my first child, first kid, threw me for a loop. Is you go from having all this free time, all the free time in the world, basically, because I worked from home then too, and so did my wife, to having this structure and this schedule where you have to be
Hmm.
home all the time, you have to be on call, and it really does mess with your training schedule. So you have to really take a step back, and to the point where I will sit down some of my clients and I will sketch the week out and I will give them the time because one of the biggest pitfalls is not having a plan. And that's why
Hmm.
most people need coaches just to get out of the blocks because it's overwhelming. They don't know where to start. They don't know how to lay things out, and that's where I come in.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that that's kind of the point of a coach. And I think like when it comes to like fitness coaching or just any sort of coaching, I always think of like the analogy of like if your car breaks down, you're most likely going to go to a mechanic, right, to get your car
Hmm.
fixed because they're a professional. That's what they're trained to do. That's what they're knowledgeable on. So it's like if you feel like you're stuck with your fitness, your, time management, whatever, like why would you not want to invest in a coach? Because it's like that's the professional. And I think it's interesting that it seems like a lot of people almost struggle with investing in ourselves with coaches or therapists or whatever the case may be. But like, oh, we can go fix our car, we can go fix our TV, whatever. So it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you can buy a new TV, you
Hmm.
can trade your car in, but you only get one body, you only get one life. And when you mess that up, you're screwed. You really
Yep.
are. And that's one of the things, like, especially as I'm not going to call us old, us men of advanced age, we have to be more particular.
Hmm.
I fought for so long against this. I thought I was some special snowflake there. I just get away with this stuff. And I never thought I'd be the guy that cuts his sugar down and doesn't drink. And now all these things that used to not make you feel bad make you feel bad. You got
Hmm.
to get more sleep. You got to train a little less frequently, a little less intense. Well, especially for me, my schedule is very hectic with jujitsu and all that stuff. We didn't even talk about that yet. But so you have to take all these things into consideration that we are immortal to begin with, but as we
Hmm.
age, we become even more immortal. I like to think that my clients and myself, we're above average, but still stuff happens, and you got to have somebody that can tell you when to back off, when to
Right.
push, and if something's right for us or not.
Exactly. Yeah. And having that outside perspective is always helpful. Eric, I know that you kind of touched on the jujitsu a little bit, so talk to us a little bit about that and what that looks like for you.
So I powerlifted for almost 5 years or so, and near the end, how do I put this? I'm not built for powerlifting. I have very, very small wrists, very small ankles, small knees, small elbows. So that stuff started to wear down. I got decently strong, I think, from my genetics, and some would say stronger than I should have been. And I think my body realized that because I started having hip issues, knee issues. I had hip surgery, knee surgery. I
Mm.
just couldn't lift the way I wanted to. And like I addressed previously, if I can't do it at 110%, it's not worth it to me.
Right.
So one something, and that's another thing I talk to my clients about. There's no one size fits all type of training here, cardio, whatever you want to do, diet even. If it makes you miserable, it's not sustainable. And if it's not sustainable, you're not going to stick with it. So
Right.
powerlifting wasn't sustainable for me, but I'm a competitive guy. And so I'd always had this interest in jujitsu. But with my kids, I couldn't find the time to train. But I found a school, as luck would have it, right down the road from my house that had 6 a.m. classes. So I started going, and I sucked, as most people do when they first start jujitsu. But I loved it because the best analogy I can make as a nerd is that it's very much like a video game. When you start off, unless you were a college wrestler or something, or you've done sambo or judo, you start out with zero stats for the most
Hmm.
part. You suck. Like I had good cardio stat and everything else. Maybe strength was okay. Everything else sucked.
Right.
But I don't like sucking at things. That's something you got to know about me. And if I suck at something, I'm going to do everything in my power to get better at that. So I started going 4 times a week, and I wouldn't miss a day. It was just that was my schedule. I mean, this is something I stress to my clients. It's like it didn't matter how I felt. It
Hmm.
mattered that was my jujitsu day. I'm going in. Some days I wouldn't grapple hard because I was had some tweaks or something, but I'd go and I'd learn every single day. So long story short, I just got my brown belt earlier this year. I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu now. I've changed gyms and now I teach jiu-jitsu, I teach morning classes, and I teach kids classes, which, wow, that is an experience. If you
Yeah.
ever, I, I've already earned a few more gray hairs in this. And it's only been a couple months now, so it's fun. But I love jujitsu, and it's just something else that I can progress in.
Yeah.
And you see guys all the time get their black belts and they're like 70. And that's why jiu-jitsu is so great because it's not about, you don't get a belt based on how big of a badass you are. You get a belt based on your knowledge and your practical application of that knowledge, demonstrating techniques. So that's what appealed to me. And it's really cool because it's like a video game that never stops updating. There's always new stuff getting added, new stuff to learn.
Hmm.
You'll never learn every single move. You won't. So that's what keeps me interested in it. It's just a never ending journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's important that you have those things that it is kind of that never-ending journey or like a video game, like you said, where there's constantly that update or that leveling up progression. Because I feel like if we don't have that in our lives, that's when we grow stagnant and just complacent with things. And what's the fun in that?
Yeah, like I said, I have ADHD. So just
Hmm.
having a life as my video game
Yeah.
isn't enough. Like business is enough for some people, but I want multiple things that I'm trying to progress in, whether it's my mentality. Like over the last year, I've done a lot of work in self improvement, and it's reflected in my body as well. And I've done a lot of work in jujitsu. I've done a lot of work on my business, and just so having multiple interests where I could, like you said, feel like I'm leveling up and or putting
Hmm.
in the work to level up. It keeps me excited. It
Yeah.
keeps me engaged.
Awesome. So, Eric, I know you just mentioned that like over the last year, you've been working on your mindset and you've mentioned that you've been through a lot of experiences, a lot of, negatives or lows throughout your life. So, can you walk us through kind of your relationship with your mindset and how you've developed it over the years and where you're at with it currently?
Yeah. Okay. So where do I begin with this one? I started dealing with depression in college. So this is early 2000s.
Okay.
And I had a lot of issues that were unresolved. In the 2000s, this is like the Stone Ages. Nobody talked about going to therapy.
Oh yeah.
Seriously,
Yep.
nobody.
Yeah.
You only went to therapy if you were crazy, quote unquote. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a taboo subject. And even my parents, I love my parents. Let me preface that before I say anything else about my parents. Love my parents. They're the best parents that anybody could ask for, but they're very much baby boomers. And baby boomers, especially the men, aren't exactly in touch with their emotions, and they don't really understand why they think and do the things that they do sometimes. I like to think that us millennials are a little more in touch with our emotions and things like that. So we're a little more progressive, and obviously Gen Z keeps it going. But
Mm-hmm.
that's why I'm just such an advocate for mental health, because so many guys my age just don't want to talk about it. But I had a lot of self-esteem issues, a lot of confidence issues, and it manifested in binge eating disorder. Oddly enough, around the same time I got into personal training. I think that getting into that field, not being properly prepared, and we'll go back to this, you have to really, in pro wrestling training, the first week, you learn that the body goes where the head goes. So if your head is in the right space, it doesn't matter. You could have the best diet coach, best training program laid out before you. Stuff is going to happen that you aren't necessarily in control. So the binge eating disorder reared its ugly head. And I think that in my youth, I probably was doing it, but as a kid, as a chubby kid, or really obese kid, people just, he's a hungry boy, he's just eating an
Mm-hmm.
entire package of Oreos. Nobody thinks for once again, my parents are baby boomers. They don't know what binge eating disorder is. It's like, this kid loves junk food. My sister was skinny. I wasn't. So they probably thought, it is what it is. He'll grow out of it. I did not grow out of it. I grew into it. I grew up. So got into that. And then after that was my first bout with binge eating disorder. And pro tip, don't go into bodybuilding without having your mind right. And I mean really right, because
Mm-hmm.
that will throw you for a loop too. So what I did was I lost some weight. I thought I beat binge eating disorder. I got into bodybuilding, did some natural bodybuilding, so got in the best shape of my life, which was a big thing for me because growing up as a fat kid, you picture yourself with fat, like the vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Problem is cart before the horse. The brain isn't right. Your mentality isn't right. The abs don't fix anything. All those
Right.
issues, well, they're still there. So after my bodybuilding shows, of course, I do the standard thing where you eat everything in sight, and I started putting on weight, and that puts me in this cycle of, oh, I don't have abs anymore. Now I'm sad, so I'm going to eat. And then I would just keep doing it. I put like a couple days, good days together, and then it was a vicious cycle. Anybody who's dealt with binge eating disorder or is familiar with it knows how hard it could be to get out of that cycle. So that's when
Mm-hmm.
I went to therapy the first time. And my doctor, Michael Trusty in Tampa, I hope he's still alive. I hope he's still alive. He saved my life. So we started going once a week there, and it really helped me overcome that period of my life. Hindsight being 2020, should have kept going. So you young guys out there, if you go to therapy for like 6 months and you think you're good, you're not. Just keep going if you can. Okay. So got out of that, got into a relationship that didn't go well. You know how that goes. Everything goes wrong leads you to where you're at, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
I meet my wife. Meet my wife. Everything's great. Everything's great. No problems there. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. Then I get the bakery, right? I think it's my forever job. I love it. I'm in newspapers, I'm in magazines, I'm doing news stories on me. We're getting this traction. We're moving a lot of cookies. We're selling a ton of cookies, but we're not making any money. We're losing money every month. I just couldn't figure it out. Once again, terrible businessman. That's why. So eventually we make the decision to close shop. And just this period, that a couple months before that, I had a dog die, and then my other dog died. And then, when you're depressed, it doesn't take a dog die. It could be something even less significant than that to thrust you further down that hole. Long story short, I find myself saying that a lot. I was in a deep, dark depression. I refused to get help. And my wife confronted me and said that if I didn't help myself or do something, and she offered to help me, she offered to put me in touch with people. And if I didn't take those steps, that she would leave me. And that was my big wake up. That was the big breaking point. So I went back to therapy, started medication right a week after that, because my family is more important to me than anything else on this planet. And I didn't realize what I had been doing to them, how bad of a father and how bad of a husband I had been. Not that I wasn't abusive or anything like that, but I just wasn't present because I'm always
Right.
consumed with my failures and my shortcomings and my all these problems that I had with myself. So I went back to therapy and then got on medication. I started working on myself more. When I wasn't there, I would start reading. I would listen to podcasts, things like that, talk with my wife, reconnect with her. And it was not an overnight thing by any means. But I put in a ton of work on myself because I knew that if I wanted to make some long lasting changes, I've yo-yoed, my body's yo-yoed all throughout my life because I never took the time to get my mentality right, to get my mindset correct. I just worked on my body. I see my body, I put my I'm like, I'm gonna do these macros, do this, do that. But then at the end of the day, my brain had been unchanged. And that's why I'd always go backwards. So I did a lot of work, and there's a lot of boring nuts and bolts. Like I cut sugar out, stopped drinking, blah, blah, blah. Nobody wants to hear that. But the point is that you have to put the work in and your mindset before any significant changes in your fitness are going to occur, or significant sustainable changes, I should say.
Yeah, I mean that's a really powerful story. Thank you for sharing that. And just like I think this just highlights the importance of the mind. And it's so easy to picture, or for us to talk about going to the gym and you start doing bicep curls, you're making your bicep, you're growing that muscle. Your brain's arguably the biggest and most important muscle in our whole bodies, but like it's not as easy for us to say like, oh, I'm gonna, meditate, I'm gonna read, I'm gonna go to therapy, counseling, because we don't want to work that muscle as much as, we want to go flex a bicep. So it's important. And I think, like you said, you need to have the mind right for the body to be right and for it to be sustainable as well.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about the non-fun habits. They want the fun habits. Like, oh, dude, like you said, curls. Curls are fun.
Hmm.
Some people even like cardio. Okay, they like that. But the stuff you have to do outside of the hour or two per day, that's where the real work happens and the real change occurs. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to really focus on legitimate self care. And I just filmed a video for my Instagram a couple days ago that I'm going to post soon about self care and how that whole idea has been perverted a little bit. And I blame COVID for this, but people started treating self care as a license to drink a lot of alcohol or eat a bunch of junk food. That's not what self care is. I mean, the best form of self care is eating right and exercise
Hmm.
consistently. But reading, breath work, meditation, all these things that nourish your mind, your spirit, and your body. That's self care. If it's drinking is the worst form of self care you think of because, like I said, at 41, if I didn't care about myself, that's when I drink because
Right.
the way it makes you feel in your 40s is not the same as the 30s or 20s. That is for sure.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's an interesting concept about self-care that's, maybe it is I agree. I think around COVID time is when I've seen kind of the shift, but a lot of people when you talk to self-care, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go to the mall and spend $500 on something, or, I'm gonna go just eat burgers and ice creams and cookies and cakes, or I'm just gonna sit on the couch all day and not do anything. And
Correct.
I understand the idea of like maybe unplugging for a couple hours or for the day and just like chill, watch some TV, whatever. But I think like self-care, it was always supposed to be about doing what's going to take care of our bodies and our minds. And I think that the things that you said, that's really what we need to be focused on more so than kind of these bad habits.
I'm glad you mentioned spending money compulsively because one of the main things that I'm most proud of in terms of the work I've put into myself is picking these vices. I was a big, I glossed over this. I spent a lot of time building my name on social media with junk food influencing and doing food reviews with my kids, cereals, Oreos, all of that crap. And I've loved that since I was a little kid. And I'm not gonna lie, some of the stuff still looks pretty good, but for the most part, I kind of grew out of it, and I just found myself not craving sugary stuff anymore. Burgers, sushi, pizza, all that stuff still looks good. I'm still a human being,
Yeah.
but I didn't find any sort of enjoyment from it anymore. So I kicked sugar first, and then I also kicked compulsive spending. One of my coping mechanisms, an unhealthy coping mechanism, is unfortunately just spending money. And connected to that would be gambling. I was a gambler as well, daily fantasy sports, football specifically,
Hmm.
spending a lot of money there. That was like, and this is the problem, right? You get an immediate dopamine release. You get that
Hmm.
instant gratification when you spend money at the mall, when you stuff bad food into your face, when you, I mean, some people have porn addictions and stuff like that. They get that immediate dopamine release. But after that goes away,
Hmm.
your bank account is smaller, I can't vouch for the porn thing. I don't know what's going on over there. So like I said, I just stay in my lane. The compulsive spending thing, you feel good while you're doing it and you get some cool shoes, and then you look at your bank account, you're like, oh, I can't pay for my car now.
Right.
Or, when you eat really sugary food or really fatty food that is designed to make you feel a certain way, you're like, oh, this is so good. Then afterwards you're bloated, you don't feel very good, you're sluggish, and then mentally you're like, I ate that stuff I probably shouldn't have eaten. So people need to see the forest through the trees when it comes to self care. Think about how it's going to make you feel the day after,
Yeah.
more so than right in that moment. Because I know for me, reading a book for 15 minutes or playing video games, that's one of my favorite forms of self care. Because God knows I don't get that much time to do it anymore. I get 15 minutes of God of War Ragnarok. I feel so good. I'm like, oh man, I'm living the life. I got my work done and I got to play video games. That's that's self care right there.
I love it. And I need to get on Ragnarok. So thank you for reminding me
Yeah,
to pick
it's
that up.
fantastic. And what the cool thing about having three kids is that you only need to buy one game at a time, because it will take me probably a good year. Like I got Ghost of Tsushima, that took me a year. The first God of War took me a year,
Yeah.
and so each game I don't get drawn in different directions. Like you play this, you play that. I'm like, yeah, I will in like 3 years. So
Right.
I'm in no rush there.
I love that. And Ghost of Tsushima is one of my all-time favorite games. So
It's a top three
good
for
choice
me
on that
for
one.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Man, well, I guess we're gonna have to do a part two someday and just talk about video games because I could go on for hours
Yeah.
on that.
I don't know how much you can see behind me,
Yeah, a
but
little bit.
I am a big nerd, a big pro wrestling nerd. I have a lot
Yeah.
of Japanese wrestling posters. I collect action figures. And so this is right now I'm in my quote unquote office, which is our storage closet. It's a really
Okay.
long like hallway. It's not air conditioned. I have my fans turned off right now. So I have a brutal case of swamp ass cooking. But normally I have fans, you can barely hear me. So I do my client calls in here. They're used to the background
Yeah.
noise, but for a podcast, I figured I'd be more professional. Yeah, I got all sorts of nerd stuff. I got I got a little arcade machine over here. Oh, I got a
Yeah.
new it's my newest action figure, the eight Michael Keaton Batman
Oh, I love
from the
that.
new Flash movie. Yeah, and so we got some arcade games in the back here. But yeah, I'm a huge nerd, and it's just one of those things I'll probably never grow out of, no matter how great a coach or businessman or influencer I become. It's always going to
Sure.
be part of me.
Yeah, that it's important. You got to keep your roots and stay true to yourself. And I love that about you, man. It's cool to hear kind of the journey that you've been going through and then knowing that you're still who you've always kind of been at the core and you're still having these interests and love and passions for things. So it's been really awesome getting to connect with you, Eric. To anyone that's listening and they want to check out your content, or maybe they're a dad and they want to see if they can work with you as a client for you, what's like the best places to kind of follow along with you or reach out or connect?
Instagram, I think, is probably the best way you're going to connect with me. If I think that's the main vehicle for most coaches these days. It's a great visual medium, so you can find me at Eric Koenreich, Ken like the doll, Rye like the bread. Here's how it's spelled. Are you ready? Koenreich. Eric Koenreich. If you just search hashtag Tired Dad Fitness Club, I will pop up. You can also find me at tireddadfitnessclub.com. That's the much easier spelling a way to get
Hmm.
to where I'm at. But yeah, I was I was tempted to change my regular username into Tired Dad Fitness Club, but I decided to go with like that's nobody's gonna forget that. They're gonna see that name and they're like, God, nobody else has that name, so
Right.
he's the only one. But yeah, that's my very German last name. So if you see that, then you'll know where to find me.
Perfect. And I will put Eric's information, his Instagram website in the description of the episode. So if you didn't catch the spelling, because I know the spelling still throws me for
It's
Koenreich.
brutal. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Please just check the text version. Yeah, check the notes.
exactly. Yep. Just
Yeah,
go
for
down
sure.
and check the description. It'll be right there. It'll be nice and easy. You won't have to worry about going to the spelling bee just to find Eric. So that'll be all down there. Eric, as we're wrapping up, any final thoughts or words you want to leave with our listeners?
I just want to tell the dads out there that your best days are not behind you. You did not peak in high school, and you do not have to accept mediocrity.
I love that. That's a great way to end it. Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you. Thank you for your time and thank you for just what you're doing for the world, whether it's the coaching dads and the clients that you work with, or just kind of spreading the conversation about mental health. I think that's something that's hugely important, very underrated in terms of the importance of it. And it's people like yourself who are using your platform for good that really makes a difference. So I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Zach. I love sharing the message. So any kind of platform I can get for that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Best of luck with everything. And I'm sure I'll catch you around. Take care, Eric.
See you.